Hi, this is Phil at Simply Rhino, and in this video I'm going to take a look at iRhino for Apple iPads and iPhones. Rather than being a development of the old Viewer app, iRhino has been completely rewritten and is essentially Rhino 8 running natively on iOS. I'll be looking here at the App Store version of iRhino, and I'll cover the work in progress version in a separate video. The release version of iRhino is currently available as a free download on the Apple App Store and requires an iPad or iPhone running iOS 16 or later. iRhino uses Apple's Metal graphics pipeline, and as we'll see shortly, this gives great performance on a good specification iPad. iRhino leverages Apple's room scan technology, and for this you'll need an iPhone Pro or iPad Pro with a built-in LiDAR scanner. To use the Scan an Object function, you'll additionally need iOS 17 and hardware with an A14 Bionic chip or better. For this video, I'm using an iPad Pro with an M1 chip, and this has essentially the same hardware as an M1 MacBook Air. Let's look first at performance. I've often used this truck model for display pipeline and GPU testing. And here, this is being manipulated in Rhino 7 on Windows using a PNY Quadro RTX 4000 graphics card. The model is a large 1.36GB file and contains meshes, solids imported from SolidWorks, and lots of native Rhino NURBS geometry. Now, of course, iRhino isn't designed for opening and processing large files, but you can probably guess what's coming next. I saved the file to Dropbox, made it available offline on the iPad, and opened it straight from the file browser. There's a pause of about 20 seconds as the file loads until the iRhino interface is visible. And for some reason the file opens in layout mode. So now I'll navigate to the named view Test Rotate, and there's another slight delay until we see the model view. I can pan and zoom using the familiar iPad gestures, and the display performance is surprisingly quick. Switching to render mode shows that all the materials have been retained, and once again the display performance is impressive. Switching to Arctic mode shows a high level of detail, and once again panning, zooming and rotating is very quick. There's a slight loss of detail when rotating and a pause until this detail returns when static. But this is entirely consistent with Rhino V8 on both a Mac or PC. As well as the usual pinch for zoom and single finger swipe for rotation gestures, double tapping in open space runs zoom extents. And when an object is selected, in this case by tapping it, double tapping in open space runs zoom selected. I can choose from single viewport mode or 4-view, and just as in the desktop Rhino, each viewport has its own display mode. Model layers are preserved, and I can control the visibility of layers and sublayers just as in the desktop product. iRhino documents can be marked up and annotated on the fly. Tapping this icon opens the Apple Pen menu and allows for annotating a drawing, and these annotations are saved in the Rhino file. But of course, you can also screenshot them and send to colleagues whilst you're in, for example, a client meeting. The annotations are view sensitive. So, for example, if I'm in 4-view and I open up a save markup, I'll immediately return to the appropriate view for that markup. Let's look now at another iRhino feature, AR rendered viewport mode. This is a simple model of a kettle being viewed in Rhino 8 for Mac. Rhino materials have been applied along with an environment from the included library and a gradient background. I'll now open this in iRhino, this time using the built-in file browser, and set the view to perspective. The model looks exactly as in the desktop version of Rhino 8, retaining the set materials, environment and background. I've now got my iPad set up on a stand, and if I open the camera app, you'll see I have a simple scene set up on the table. Back in iRhino, I can select Display and choose Rendered AR, and this merges the rendered view with the camera background, creating an augmented reality scene. As my iPad has a LiDAR scanner, I can select Horizontal Surface from the placement options and snap the base of the kettle to the table in the scene. I can then scale and rotate as necessary before locking the position, which allows me to move the camera whilst keeping the modelled kettle anchored in position. Another iRhino feature that uses the LiDAR scanner is Scan a Room, and this makes use of Apple's Room Scan technology built into iOS. This allows for quick scanning of interiors such as the hotel room in this example. Once Scan a Room is started, it's simply a case of following the on-screen prompts and moving the camera around the room. The white lines show the edges of the room that have been resolved, and a preview of the model builds in real time. The scanning process is relatively quick, and in this example, shown here in real time, the whole process took less than 2 minutes to complete. The speed and simplicity make this a great tool if, for example, you're involved in interior design, exhibition design, kitchen design or similar, as this can simplify and speed up the procedure of measuring up for the purposes of initial concepts and budgeting, where perhaps a full survey wouldn't be cost effective. Cutting to the end of this process, once the scan is completed, there's a rendered preview of the model that, once accepted, opens in iRhino. The model is built from easily editable solid poly surfaces rather than meshes, and a dimensioned floor plan is automatically created in addition to the model. The model is layered, and the walls, television, table, bed, etc. are automatically recognized and placed on their appropriate layers. In addition to the model views, there's a dimension plan view in a Rhino layout. In this example, the unit system is set to meters, but here I can change the unit of measurement for both the model and layer space. The file can then be saved in either Rhino 7 or 8 formats for further editing if necessary. With the current App Store product, you'll see a work in progress message. With this in mind, it's possible that once the app is more fully developed, there may be some charging mechanism involved in saving. But, as I understand it, nothing has been decided upon as yet. Here's the save file seen in Rhino 8 for Windows. During the making of this video, a new version of Apple's iOS and iRhino were released, and this combination makes use of Apple's Object Scan technology in iOS 17 and gives us this new Scan an Object button. For this command to work, the iPad or iPhone needs to be in portrait mode, and it's immediately obvious that an iPhone would be a much easier device to manipulate when scanning an object such as this pressure washer. To start the scanning process, a bounding box is created around the object. Once this has been adjusted, the scanning process can be started, And it's then a case here of moving slowly around the object to capture the first of 3 passes. For the second pass, Apple suggests flipping the object onto its side before creating and adjusting the bounding box again and repeating the previous process, before finally flipping the object again and creating a third and final capture. In comparison to Scan a Room, Scan an Object seems a more involved process, and whilst my scanning technique here is pretty poor, it's fair to say that unlike Scan a Room, where Rhino converts the meshes to solids and adds dimensions and layers, Scan an Object doesn't as yet offer much in the way of post-processing. The result is very similar to the mesh scans that are produced by other scanning apps, and in this case is only really useful as a guide for creating a new model. That said, however, the mesh geometry created is at a correct 1:1 scale, and the colour texture map could be useful in itself. Another recently introduced feature is the ability to use universal control with Rhino for Mac and iRhino. This allows for the Mac and iPad to be controlled with the same keyboard, mouse or trackpad. In this example, I have Rhino 8 running on a Mac and iRhino running on my iPad at the same time. Starting on the Mac, I can push through the mouse cursor on the left-hand side of the screen and take control of iRhino. I can then select all of the model and copy to the clipboard, return to the Mac, and paste the result into the desktop Rhino. So, that's about the end of what I wanted to cover in this video. Thanks for watching, and please feel free to leave any comments below. If you found this video useful, then please hit the like button, and remember, to keep up with the latest developments in Rhino, you can subscribe to this channel. At Simply Rhino, we offer training for Rhino and all its key plugins, so check out our website for more details. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch up with you in the next video.